Welcome to our first podcast. Been planning to do a podcast for ages, but never knew exactly what to say or topic. But then lately, I've been getting a lot of questions from people asking, how do I get into our industry? Coding, web development, software development. Now, it's never been a problem, but over the years, I've realized there are a lot of people who are currently in other industries or other jobs. We've got some hired people who used to be forklift drivers. I've had people who were chefs. I've had people who were store managers. And then discovered web development and software development. And then one of the first few questions they always ask me is, what stack do I learn? And I'm telling them, you don't really need to learn a stack. I've always said, pick one language that you think you will enjoy or find it easy to learn, and get really good at that topic or that language. And then, because if you've got a good base, it's easy to pick up any other language. So what I'm trying to do is, maybe I should backtrack. So the whole idea of this podcast is we want people to realize that software developers or web developers are still people.
You sure?
We don't.
Sometimes
you're robots, but we don't just code and nothing else in life. So we do have life outside of coding.
Speak for yourself. My God.
But so the whole idea of this podcast, it could be episode 1 of 1, or it could be episode 1 of 100. We don't know how this is going to fare. If anyone would listen to it, we don't even have a podcast name yet. But that's probably we'll probably do a vote at the end of the day. But so welcome to episode 1 of hopefully many. So the main topic for today, I just want us to talk about how we got in the industry in terms of web development, software development. Is this web industry? So I'll probably start first.
Yeah.
So I've been programming since I was 12. When I was young, always been into computers. And then it was one of the school holidays. My dad just, hey, come along with me. So we went to this place. It's like a building. I can't even remember what the building was. And there was this group of students there. Never knew anyone, but all the students there knew each other. So went into a room. There was this, can't remember the model, but it's those old Apple Macintosh. And then some kids who probably knew their computing stuff started typing some stuff, and it actually read out back to you. I was like, shit, this is cool. And then that was just learning how to use the Apple Mac. And then the next thing that it gave to us was this, I think it's called Logo or PC Logo. What it was, so you've got this turtle in the middle of the screen. You put in some commands to draw certain patterns on the screen. Now, is that programming? I really can't remember. But to me, that's some form of programming. That's where I learned.
Reminds me of like Python Turtles.
It might be similar, yes.
Yeah, because I know that was one of my first programming courses that I did as part of high school. So.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but we had to draw fractals and patterns. And, so it must be similar. So from then on, got into programming, learned a few languages, but I've always been into creative stuff, designing stuff. So, dad was a designer, mom was an art teacher. But then in Singapore, the education system, it's set up to be, it's almost a fixed path for almost everyone. Like if you're a good student, you follow this path all the way to uni. And if you're a not so good student, you follow this path all the way to what they call ITE, which is kind of similar to TAFE. So finally did my diploma. It's called software technology. We learn programming and stuff. A few other languages, got more hardcore, doing C programming. And I went to the army. So in Singapore, you've got to do national service, and I did my national service in the army. And because I had a diploma in software technology, And when I was in the army, so I was platoon sergeant with a third sergeant rank, looking at the recruits. And when some of them, one of the officers found out that I've got a programming background, he pulled me aside and started doing some stuff for the army, as in some coding stuff. And, well, that's what he said. So when they turned out to be just video editing and stuff, because I'm sure all of you probably get this, because you learn programming or you learn software technology, your uncle will ring you up and, hey, my computer's not working.
You work with computers, you work in
Exactly.
Yeah, and I get that with every family member.
Yeah. So, and that was the same. So after the army, so I've never really wanted to, even though I was kind of good at programming, I wasn't really enjoying myself. But then again, like I said, in Singapore, there's this perception where, you've got to go to uni, get that piece of paper, and then you get a good job. So I came to Perth, went to Curtin Uni, computer science. My first year, I was struggling. No, so when I say struggle, I struggled to have this focus of trying to do well and, just get my degree. And after a while, I really wanted to quit. Mistake I made was, I scored really well in one of our subjects in the first semester. And I go, hey, it should be easy, I might as well continue. And then I think it was the second or third semester, we had a project, graphics project, where we had to do up a user manual in a website. So instead of writing a Word document, or whatever software we're using back then, you got to write up a website for a user manual. So that's when I first learned HTML, CSS. Now, before that, I've done websites before. I think it's the same thing as here, but in Singapore, every time you have an account with an ISP, they give you like this free hosting, for the one page thing. And I remember using Microsoft FrontPage, to build websites and stuff. So there was some creativity there. But then when I started learning HTML, CSS, I'm like, hang on a minute, I could actually amalgamate my programming skills and my creativity. So I started, learning websites, building them, designing some stuff. I actually went around uni. So I used to go to uni for my class, not my classes, but I'll go in late night to do my work because I know I can never do my work at home. So I was asking everyone, it's like, hey, have you finished your assignments? Like, no. Do you want me to do your website? Oh yeah, sure. So that seriously is my first freelance gig in uni. So, anyways, after graduation, I talk a lot, don't I? So, after graduation, I really did not want to do any programming, but that's something you can do. So, after 3 years of doing PHP programming and stuff, even some .NET, decided to stop it. Go and apply for a job that's solely front end or some design, and got my first job doing front end professionally. Did it, enjoyed it. Realized I didn't know everything, so spent in a day doing my work, at night learning everything that I can. And that was when jQuery came out, which I know no one uses now.
Some people still use it.
To me it's easy, and we did our own plugins and stuff. So that was in 2006, and ever since then, I've been just doing websites and front end HTML, CSS. That's what I'm good at, and it's almost automatic now. Even CSS, I'm not saying I'm the best. Like, I still struggle with Flex grids. But I think my experience was, good or bad, I had to work with IE6. And I'm sure you guys can probably read about IE6.
I don't want to.
Yeah, and because of that, trying to fix problems with IE6, you learn to look at solving a styling issue in a different way. And if I were to write my resume now, look for a job, that's the skill that I'll put in. Like, I can fix, I'll look at a website problem and I'll fix it. Styling issues, I'll fix it. That's my number one skill. It's not CSS, it's not HTML itself, it's not Smarty, it's not Twig, it's not even PHP. It's actually solving a problem. So yeah, that's how I'm got into the industry. It's kind of like almost a typical, been doing computers or computer science for ages, and it's just a, path to take.
Cool.
So who wants to go next?
I'm happy to go next.
Yeah, I'll go.
my sort of childhood, I guess, would be similar in that sense. I've always used computers since I was, my parents got me like a PlayStation 1 when I was 5. And since then, just computers all the time. But I'd never really gotten into like programming until like probably one like programming course as part of a computing class in year 10. And then after high school was like when I actually got into programming.
So, sorry to interrupt. So, totally side thing. I had a bisc off before this solo. It does not go well.
I can't imagine it would.
Yeah. This was horrible. So, that's my lesson for today. Don't have a bisc off followed by solo.
You heard it here first.
It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Fair enough.
Anyways, sorry.
What was I saying? Yeah, no, so, well, I guess there were a couple, like, small, like, obscure scripting languages that I did as part of, like, you know, a mod for a game would involve those, and I'd play around with those. And,
Lua.
yeah, a lot of Lua
Yes.
and stuff like that. So, I guess I did a bit of, like, small scripting stuff, but apart from that, not much actual, like, you know, intro to object-oriented programming and whatnot. I didn't really learn that. So my main introduction would be, you know, after year 12, I dropped out of high school. I went to TAFE after that, and I started a programming certificate. And that's where I initially got into programming. I didn't complete that. I started it at the start of 2020, and then we went into lockdown, and then I ended up dropping that course because, I don't know, there was a lot more on my plate at the time. I couldn't handle it. So,
And studying in lockdown sucks.
yeah, it's really not great. So, after that, I figured maybe it's not for me. Okay. I tried a course, the programming was fine, but like I enjoyed that, but the documentation involved and all the ethics and, copyright and all that kind of stuff that surely I'd have to think about constantly when I'm doing the work. That is the bad part that I don't want to do. So I moved on. I went and got my telecommunications Cert 3, and then I went into Cert 4 and started my networking, like IT certificate. And I didn't like it. I viewed it more as something that I could do as a job. I could see myself working in it and not hating my job, but not enjoying it. So I was more not happy with my choice, but content with it. So that was my position I was in. But, halfway through it, I was like, okay, I'll go to the, TAFE IT Open Day. I just got an email for this. And I show up. I think it was like a Thursday. And I sit down and I sit in the chair. And this one guy just comes up on stage and, fumbles a bunch of his words. And I decide, hey, I'm going to ask him a question. And I ask him, hey, I'm not in programming, but I have always enjoyed programming since I've started. Do you think it would be possible for me to move from a networking certificate into something that would, help me in a programming pathway? And I don't remember Riz's answer because, surprise, surprise, I was Riz on the stage, but...
I'm pretty sure I said yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you said yes, and then I think you mentioned, the chef person and whatnot, but yeah. No, that was great. And then, I went on to have a chat with you at the, open discussion, like in the hall, yeah. And that was sort of my first entryway in. So I wasn't specifically studying anything. I had a small background, but it was more like an understanding of how computers worked rather than how to program. And I then started learning more, getting into it. So, yeah.
Cool.
Cool. You're just doing round table?
Yeah.
Cool. So I kind of first started getting into programming because I was at the same. So I finished. I actually dropped out of high school. Didn't finish high school. I started doing sound production, like sound engineering, diploma through TAFE. I finished that. I really enjoyed it, actually. I still do. So I did that. I did my advanced diploma. When I finished that, I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do. So in Perth, it's not the most exciting place to be a sound technician because I wanted to be a studio engineer. So I wanted to do recording, mixing, mastering. There's not a lot of work to do that in Perth, especially when you first start out. You kind of just end up being someone who sets up stages. You just do a lot of kind of monotonous work. And so I was not sure I wanted to do that. I had an option to go and study further and do a Bachelor of Sound at Murdoch University. And I actually would have had units covered, and I was contemplating doing that. I took a year off from studying. Well, initially 6 months, it ended up being a year because I wanted to figure out what I actually wanted to do. And in that time, so I did a bunch of freelance sound engineering and stuff, ran some live gigs, did some setup, I recorded some bands, I did a bunch of stuff on myself, and just realized it's probably not really... yeah, well, I would want to do it if the opportunity was there, but I also didn't want to move. And yeah, it just seemed like it might not be the right industry for me. So actually, I wasn't sure at all what I wanted to do. My dad, so he's a hardware... so he's an electronics engineer. So yeah, he helps design and build hardware. So he was kind of saying maybe I should look into doing that, which I thought was interesting. It's kind of like technical. I kind of have always liked things that have been like challenging and problem solving. And I was quite good at maths and stuff like that in school, but I didn't enjoy it. So I was tossing up between that. And he just mentioned to me in passing, like, what about web design? And I was like, okay, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of it myself. I don't know why. But yeah, so I started contemplating the two pathways, and so all my life I've kind of enjoyed creative outlets. I've always done creative stuff. And so I was like, okay, cool. Design, that kind of thing sounds kind of interesting. So I ended up deciding to go down that pathway and enrolled at Curtin University, doing like a bachelor. It's now a Bachelor of Design, digital design. So started that with the intent that I would be interested in going down a design pathway, and then so basically the idea of the degree, for anyone that doesn't know, is it's kind of half UI UX design. Kind of like there's a lot of user research, a lot of resource gathering, that kind of stuff, and then the actual UI design itself, and then it's also programming, with focus on web programming. So I had a few, obviously like half the units are programming units. So I started doing that, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I was still interested in the design side, but I liked the technical problem-solving aspects of the programming. So
hang on, that's the first time you did any kind of programming?
Yeah, actually. When I was a kid, I used to do like some game programming, like just make video games and stuff. I did a lot of Scratch. I don't know if anyone knows Scratch.
Oh yeah, you just reminded me.
Yeah, it's like building block, like logical statements that you put together and you can make games. And I actually made some pretty cool games as a kid. I went back and looked at them and I was like, wow, that's interesting.
You've just pulled out a deep, memory of like it was a primary PIAC. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
I did the Scratch course at PIAC as well, but I already knew it.
I did PIAC. They had a game development studio course that they were holding at SciTech, and that was.
I did that as well.
Yeah, so that was. I think that was my first intro to programming. Probably. Yeah, but yeah.
Wow, cool. So I did a bit of that, and then I touched a little bit of Unity stuff. Didn't really know what I was doing, obviously, as a kid. But yeah, so that was the first time I actually properly programmed was in uni. So, but I really loved it. And I did quite well in my units. Kind of fell in love with it a little bit. So I would say like midway through the degree, I was kind of in between being more interested in the design side and being interested in the programming side. And then throughout my last year in the degree, I was like, I like the programming. So I obviously started doing front-end stuff. It was cool. It was fun. And then in the last year, we had some units that were like full stack, so front-end and back-end specific. and I kind of chose to like push a little further than the actual requirements for the assignments, and kind of get a little more involved in the back end of the stack. It was just doing like Node.js. It made sense because we all already knew JavaScript for the front end stuff, and we started doing like Node Express on the back end, working with like document databases like MongoDB. But yeah, so that was really cool. And then I ended up doing my final assignments full stack as well, which was cool. I worked a little bit more with the back end, did a couple custom things, did my own research. I ended up actually learning React as well, which wasn't part of the curriculum. We were supposed to just do vanilla JavaScript websites, but I was like, I want to learn React. I was told not to, but I just did it
So
anyway.
what was the framework you were using? Because that was the year I didn't attend the thing, but I was looking at all the portfolios. But that was actually my first, I suppose, foray into like any kind of JavaScript frameworks.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what it was. I had to ask Josh, but yeah, what were you using?
So we weren't taught to use any frameworks. So we were taught we basically did single page applications for the front end, but without a framework. So we were taught how to actually, we put the routing together, the rendering, the HTML swapping, all that stuff actually together ourselves. So that was pretty cool. But I learned React as well on top because I was interested in it and I thought it was an employable skill. So learned that. But then after the degree, I started at Blue Sky, software development company, and basically just started with more of a focus still towards the front end, but then really just rabbit hole down the back end, which I'd probably say I'm more interested in now. I do a lot more back end stuff, system architecture, a lot of database design, microservice, like distributed systems, like that's kind of my bread and butter now, which I really enjoy.
Cool.
Okay.
B?
Well, growing up, I always had a wide variety of interests, but I sort of always I was more drawn towards like building things and creating things. But yeah, so when I finished high school, I ended up doing mechatronics. I was like, okay, this seems like an interesting thing, so maybe I would enjoy doing it. So in mechatronics, on the first and second year, we mainly had like electronics and mechanics units. So I was sort of always doing that. And by the last year, we sort of had a little bit of programming introduced to it, but it was like very low level programming. And I was like, hang on, this seems a bit more interesting. So I kind of started to find it a bit more interesting. And as we were sort of finishing the degree, I was like, I didn't really see myself working in the industry in mechatronics. So I was like, maybe programming is something that I would like to explore a little bit more. So yeah, I sort of found it more interesting. And then after that, I moved to Australia. So again, this was when I was living back home, which is in North Macedonia. So after that, I moved to Australia and I got a bit more into programming. Personally, I'm a bit more like a visual person. So especially like in web development, that's why I had a bit more preference to like front end over back end. Although I sort of like enjoy both, but I kind of do a bit more front end because I'm a visual person. I like seeing what I do.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I remember very clearly this point in time in uni. I can't remember exactly what programming was, and sometimes you're trying to look compile errors, and then struggle, and it turns out it's just a small semicolon or missing semicolon, and it takes ages to see a difference. And when I first learned CSS, background red, and you see red, and I'm like, like you're saying, it's like I'm such a visual person that attracted me more. Like I enjoyed that instant change. It's like background red, background green, it's green. So I think that's why I enjoy it. Like you said, like visually it stimulates me more.
Yeah. But yeah, so like when I moved to Australia, initially I wasn't really thinking that I was going to end up into like web development. I was going to go into like software engineering, but I wasn't really sure which part because obviously that's like a very vast field. So I wasn't really sure which part I'm going to be focusing on. But yeah, throughout the time that I was at UWA, I think I got involved with one of the student clubs, and they were doing like these summer software engineering, software development projects.
This is the Coders podcast.
Yeah, Coders podcast, yeah. And that's when I was like, so I was doing like a little bit, I got involved with the projects a little bit. I was doing a small part of it, which happened to be like in React. And I was like, okay, I like this is fun. So yeah, I think that was my first time actually, doing any web development whatsoever.
I think the common theme, I think, and not just with us, but a few people I've spoken to, the biggest attraction with software web development is actually solving problems. Like, everything is a problem, and you really want to fix that problem.
And find like the best solution to the problem.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing, right? It's like, because maybe not so much Aubrey, but like you, the reason I asked it's because, you started programming like 2-3 years ago, and then now you're kind of doing full time. 4 or 5, and I've had few people where, they're working very well, not enjoying, because I think that's one thing in society, isn't it? Like, sometimes a lot of people, or the masses, feel like, oh, this is what I can do, so I need a job, and because I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got bills to pay, etc. So, and I do understand sometimes it's a leap to follow your passion, and I think it's hard for us to kind of sit down here and say, oh, look, that's a passion, go follow your passion, because everyone's different, everyone's got different situations and stuff, and money unfortunately does run the world. Everything revolves around money.
Need money to live.
So yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. Now, I wrote this question here because I just thought of it, right? So I've got this question where I say, what's the element of the job you enjoy most? I think that's almost pointless to us now, because I think the biggest enjoyment I think we all get is solving the issue. But what's the most annoying or habit you pick up over the years?
The most annoying habit?
Well, annoying habit or a habit to do with programming. So, I'll tell you mine. So, the biggest thing with me,
Changes month to month.
Yeah.
you will never see me Control S once. So, I'll write something, I'll save it, I'll press Control S twice. Control S, Control S.
Yeah.
If it's something important,
10.
it's 3 times. And or sometimes 10. I don't know why that is, but it's a habit I have. So
You can't do it once. It's
And
not
I think-
trustworthy.
yeah, you can't trust, and that's when you started off. And then it became a habit where I feel we should, is it saving? No,
Yeah,
let me
you
just
gotta be
double
sure.
check.
I've just got mine on autosave.
So
Yeah, mine is
I-
like
and
least
here's the
breakfast
thing,
of
I
the
don't-
window that saves.
I don't trust autosave because I don't need to be saving something that was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
like
what
in my
that's what
mind.
kids for.
Yeah. So it's funny how I was just telling, I was telling Aubrey and Dee back in the days before kid and stuff. The way we used to do web development, and I think you guys might have come across the files.
God.
So
Yeah.
we will still have a repo, right? The repo was new to us, we were using Tortoise SVN back in the old company. But then, a client rings up, it's like, hey, we need this fixed. Oh shit, it's like, I don't want to go through this process of, pulling, pushing, blah, blah, blah. So you do the fix, save it, FTP in, before you FTP over the file, rename the file, _ back, month, day, year.
And we still do that with Nginx and Docker files.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Docker files,
On the
Nginx
server.
files, yeah.
Now, the worst part of that is, it's all cool. Yeah, you fix the problem, you upload. And then, oh wait, no, I missed something. Oh shit, I've already got the date. What do I call it? _V1,
Yeah.
_V2, _V3.
But that brings me back to the sound engineering days. That's what you would do. You'd have like one mix, and then you'd tweak a little thing, and then it'd be version 1, and then it'd be like final. There'd be final dash dash actually final this time.
That was all of my assignments during high school. So yeah, just V1, V2, V3, V4, V5. That's gets real
So-
messy.
Yeah, so what other habits have you got? Anyone?
The first thing that comes to mind when I'm trying to commit something in Git, I want to commit all untracked, or all tracked but unadded files to the repo. You do your git-am. I started just, I always type git-a-m and then the commit message rather than the shorthand flags of git-am. And I just can't drop it. I started doing it.
That's a pretty small bad habit.
It's a
Doesn't
small
really
bad
change
habit. It minorly bugs me, but that was the main thing.
Well,
that I
that's
can
pretty
think
good
about.
if that's your
Yeah.
worst bad habit.
Oh, it's definitely not my worst, but it's the first one that came to mind.
B?
I'll have to think about this one. Do you want to go first?
Well, it doesn't have to be a bad habit, I suppose. It's just something where you know, like I used to play games, but you know, I guess you write documents, you write Word documents, but I've never had the Control S a million times. But
I think my bad habit is just writing really bad commit messages.
Oh,
yeah.
I
Everyone's just WIP, work in progress, work in progress.
I mean, that's
Done,
not
works.
uncommon with our projects, but I've
Yeah.
been trying to get a bit more serious on those with mine.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I hope to see the same from you maybe one day.
Yeah, except I barely ever commit these
Yeah,
days.
that's
It
true,
doesn't
yeah.
make much difference.
Another one that just came to mind, I'm really bad with my bash scripts. I keep making new ones and
All the bash scripts.
a lot of bash scripts all over the place, and every one for a different project is new, and there's no consistency between them. I've got to start setting them up properly, but yeah, that's another bad habit.
any habits, B?
Yeah, well, now that you mentioned commits, I had, well, obviously, writing, like having bad commit messages is a thing, but also having bad stash messages is another thing.
You know,
I know
up
the
until
stash.
like a month
That fixes
ago,
the issue.
up until a month ago, I didn't know you could add messages to
Stash.
stashes. So I would just go, git stash and then git stash pop for the last stash.
And it's always just the last one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I would never need any more than that.
Mm.
Like, I would like, okay, I want to move to another branch to quickly fix something there and then come back. And I don't want to make a commit just yet. So git stash, run away to the other branch, come back, git stash pop.
Just pop the last one. Yeah.
But then I'd forget that I stashed something and go and do something else.
Yeah, and then you just never
Yeah.
lose it.
I lose it.
Sick.
So,
No, I have like an array of like stashes.
That's so
That sounds-
she
Organized.
is, yeah.
See, it's funny how. So I've been doing this so professionally for 20 years. Now, what you guys just talk about in the last minute or so, I do understand. I do know it, but it's not my daily practice. Because when I started, there was no such thing as Git, or maybe there is, but we've never used it.
Not so popular.
Everyone now, needs to know how to, use Git.
Unless you're
And
at Google, then you use Mercurial.
But that's my advice to everyone. Like, so I get a lot of resumes, and it's hard for me these days because it's not. So in the old days, you've got backend and front. Well, you've got full stack developers in smaller companies because you save money. You just want to hire that one person to do everything.
Yeah.
And then what we've learned is in a previous company that I worked in, you've got backend and front end. So if you're a backend person, you just consider the backend. Front end person, you consider the front end. And the analogy I always give, it's like if you play football or soccer. If you're a striker, that's your job. Just score goals. If you're a defender, you just defend. But a good thing is when the striker, that's your job, but then you understand how defending is. So that's how you beat the defenders. And likewise with the defenders, like you know how strikers work, you can kind of counter that. So that's the way I see it. But then these days, everyone wants to be a full stack, which is a good thing. But yeah, so
I think being a full stack makes you a better developer.
I think so too.
Sure.
I think so too. But it's like these days everyone's talking about stashes and this and that, and I'm like sitting there, it's like, oh god, I'll just FTP underscore back, blah, that's it. That's.
And then you never run into merge conflicts, so it solves that problem.
I remember. I can't remember what project it was, and Brian was asking. It's like, it's like a server. Like I'm trying to do a pool, and you've got all these conflicts and stuff. It's like, don't worry, just override. That's all because of the FTP.
Get reset hard.
Yeah. So I think one of the big that actually leads to one of the biggest advice I give to a lot of people or budding juniors or budding people who are doing something else at the moment. Always say the chef example. And you discovered web development, software development, you want to get into it. Have a Git account or learn how to use Git. And then because it's no longer the days or my time where it's simply sending me your portfolio because yeah, it might look cool and all, but I still need to know how it works.
I want to see the code.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I've hired people where it doesn't look good, but the code is good.
Yeah, and you can see it's organized. It's a good hierarchy. You know, they'll be a good developer.
Yeah. And my second biggest advice is, again, I think I mentioned at the top, it's, find one language that you think you're gonna enjoy. Even it doesn't matter whether it's easy to learn or people, a lot of people say, oh, that's easy to learn, don't learn that, that's something hard. No, just pick something up, be good at it.
Something you'll stick with.
Yeah, you'll still pick up the fundamentals no matter what language.
Exactly. It's like if you know how
Well,
to drive, if you can drive well,
Maybe
you
don't
can
pick
easily
like
drive any car.
bash, and then you'll be great. Okay.
It'd be good, but just do something else after.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any other advice you guys can think of?
For me would be, I would say if you want to learn something, have like a project or something in mind, because it's going to make it far more rewarding and interesting.
And don't just get stuck in tutorial hell.
Yeah. For me, I know when I was doing my Cert 4 in programming, we were taught 2 different languages, and I'm assuming at the time that was to be like, okay, you can see the differences between these 2, and so you're actually just learning the programming fundamentals and not the language.
Yep.
Thing is, we were taught C# and Java.
Oh, the same thing.
They're the same thing. You don't get that.
No, that was
It's a bad idea. Just 2
Yeah.
object-oriented,
Yeah.
very, very similar
So-
languages.
If you're keen on like wanting to learn like 2 different languages to try and make sure you're learning the actual fundamentals that you're supposed to learn, don't try and pick different languages.
Yeah.
Like pick yourself like a JavaScript, and then I don't know, maybe something more like strict, like pick a Java or pick a Go. Go would be great.
Go. Team go.
But
Do you want
yeah,
to do a plug for the Go Meetup? Or?
No, I'll try not to be too.
yeah, but try and pick languages that have differences and learn the fundamentals and the similarities between the 2. You'll be great at any language you pick up thereafter. So
I think I've got another advice. It's more so. It's 2 facets to this. You've got the older, more mature people, or people who are currently in other industries, and you decide to do this, and I think that's a passion worth following, because whatever you do, following your passion is always make things better. But the other side of things, the juniors, the young people, my biggest advice is always, I know it's hard, depending on your circumstances, but just because everyone is doing it, you feel the need to do it. Just because everyone's saying, because back in the days, IT wasn't a big thing, and so everyone's like saying, you have to do IT. Because side note, I used to do fashion, but I kind of had to drop out because I was studying software technology and fashion at the same time, fashion design. But part of that reason was also because you're in an environment where you're not going to make money as a fashion designer. You're probably going to make more money in IT, because IT is such a growing thing that was in the 90s.
Practical.
Yeah, so I think, and in this day and age of social media and stuff, and people get influenced easily, and it has to be a passion. It has to be a passion, because I'm glad, like I've been creative, doing front end. I found that passion to kind of continue, because you don't want to be, honestly, you do not want to get a job where every day, I don't care how much you earn.
Yeah.
You can earn a lot, you go back home, throw your bags down, don't even want to, go with friends, always arguing with partner and stuff. That's not life.
Yeah, it's good to find something, at least if you have a mix between, I find like 30% of this pretty enjoyable and engaging. And maybe the other 70 is like, not too bad. But something that you just completely dislike and you don't enjoy at all.
But having said that, having the passion to do it, that also doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
And
Anything worthwhile is going to be hard.
Exactly. That makes it more satisfying at the end of the day, especially when you solve something, a huge problem, and
You finally come across a solution.
Yeah. It's
But I also say, this is my advice. 2 things that are very overlooked, especially this first one, especially if you want to be a back-end developer. Yes, focus on the programming language, focus on how to program, but do not overlook how important SQL is. it's very, very important. Being able to write good queries, being able to understand relational databases, being able to understand good database design, super, super important. Because you can have a really well-written program in terms of like it will run Java or something, for example. Your Java could be amazing, but you write an actual application and your SQL is bad and the way that you design the database is bad, that's going to bottleneck everything. And it's going to make it really, really difficult to actually get to the outcomes that you want. So I'd say SQL, don't overlook that. And obviously, we've already discussed Git. Like, it's something that they don't really teach enough in
I need to
uni.
know this.
I want to add something on top of that.
Yeah.
I think a good place to research into would be HTTP methods and HTTP, the basics of the internet,
Of the
modern
protocols.
internet.
Yeah.
It is very handy, coming from a networking background, as I mentioned,
Mm.
knowing the network stuff that is holding up what you're building on top of.
Mm.
So
And what it actually all means.
yeah.
Mm.
So learning that would be a great addition on top of it. Yeah.
Agreed.
Advice, please?
Well, apart from what I said earlier and what the guy just mentioned now at this stage.
The other thing that kind of reminds me, it's like one last thing I'll say, it's the other question I always get is, do you need a degree or a diploma to get into this? And to be honest, not really.
Mhm.
Is it helpful? Yes. Like a TAFE degree, a TAFE versus a diploma versus a degree, and yeah, you do learn a lot of theory and stuff, but again, this comes from, if you understand more, you know more things in details, even though you might not apply, but you do apply the knowledge.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it is helpful, but you don't have to.
I feel
A
like
good,
sorry.
yeah, a good example is, so it's the most basic. If-else statements. Everyone thinks that's easy. Now, if you do a small website or do a small systems, you can easily go if, or if, else, else, if. But when it becomes a big program, a big software, a big website, it does matter. Speed does matter.
Sure.
You don't want to be something when you know whether it has to be a switch statement or if else, or nested ifs, etc. And that's one thing I realize. A lot of people tend to overlook this just because they need to meet a deadline.
Mm.
Just to make it looks okay. And it's a hard habit. It's a balance that you always try to have to find. But yeah, so these are the little small nuances that you kind of, if you know the more you know, the better it is.
Yeah, I know. Touching back on the getting a degree and how necessary that is. I never studied anything on a university level. I did a basics, as part of my networking certificate. It was a basics intro to Python, and as part of the programming thing, basic intro to C# and Java, and then a bit of HTML. But I think the main differences between my understanding and maybe Luke's understanding, I don't have the terminology that you would get from a university degree. Luke does. So we're speaking a bit of different language, when we talk to each other. So trying to learn that terminology, there's definitely online tools that you can use or online resources, but those are the main issues that I have nowadays.
I mean, it's even the same for me in some regards because I didn't do a computer science degree.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the important thing is that you learn how to learn.
Yeah.
Because even if you didn't learn something at university, it's just important that you know how to learn. Because I'll tell you right now, the majority of the stuff I know in terms of programming or in terms of software, lots of it, vast majority, did not come from uni. I would say I learned more in the first 3 months that I was at my first industry job than in my 3 years at uni. And as long as you have that drive to continue to learn, to fill the gaps that you don't know, and to really, sharpen your skills, even though they're already good, and to continue to, find out more things, I think that's really the most.
I definitely agree with you. I think I learned more from the intro activity that I was given than I did from any of my tech courses.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would say probably that uni doesn't really prepare you for the industry. It does prepare you for academia, if you want to continue further, but not necessarily for the industry.
Yeah, it doesn't really help you with the industry, but
Doesn't really help that, industry is constantly changing.
Yep.
So
yeah.
it is difficult for an educational institution to keep up. I think there is a couple of things that I would rather like educational institutions focus on. Like I know a lot of them will change languages year to year, but I don't think that's important. I think it's important that they have two languages that are fairly easy to learn.
And teach
That,
different things.
you know, teach different things. That's it. Like you don't need to pick the most modern technologies. You just need to teach, you know, the students to learn.
And go more into detail on the actual fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I think the other, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just going back to B's point. Like, so, another question I always get, right? So, be it TAFE or uni, it's like, why do I need to, go to classes when I can do them online? And why do I need to go to TAFE or uni when I can do them online? And here's the thing: while it might not prepare you for any kind of industry at all, be it us, anyone else, it does help you with some sort of life skills, soft skills.
Yeah, you're going to be working in an office with people.
Exactly. A good example is a group project. What happens? What do you do when someone's not putting the work? What happens when on the last day of submission, everything goes wrong, pear-shaped, someone did something, Control-A, delete, for example, and you've got none of that in Git. What do you do? So these are the skills that you actually learn and pick up, and you don't get it from just online learning.
That's
So
true.
that's why I always say it is. I know it's going towards a lot of online stuff, but that's something that you can't get. It does help, going uni and TAFE or uni or TAFE, in person. It helps a lot. Now, the last part is the fun part. So we don't even have a name for our podcast. I would go through a few names, but so the first name that came to mind, right? It's a bit naughty, but I just want to say it because I thought of it. I thought it was good, so I wanted to call it DILF. So DILF, but it's not what you mean. It basically stands for Devs I Love to Fork, as in FORK. But then that's probably a long name, and that's probably not safe for work.
Yeah.
So I came up with a name I want us to vote, right? Over the weekend, I thought of No Compile. And that came from, I think I was watching a skateboard video, doing a no comply move. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I just changed the comply to compile.
That's pretty good.
So no compile.
Yeah.
One of the other ones, which I thought was pretty good, but then to call it's a bit weird. So it's either no pull requests or no PRs. So I think at the moment I'm leaning towards no compile. What do the others think?
I don't like my
No compile?
like
No, no.
Alright, so I think we'll stick with no compile. Any last words? So
Thank you for listening.
yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank
That's
you
the
very
end
much.
of episode 1 of No Compile podcast. Hopefully there's an episode 2 soon. So that's not bad. That was almost an oh my god.
Almost now. What's up?
I forgot to hit record.
Did you actually? Oh shit.
Oh my god. Hopefully the sound here is good.
Riz.
Idiot.
Oh no.
I think I did for the before when we tested it and then just didn't
No.
No.